Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. A delegation from the European Parliament recently visited Poland and was alarmed by the reaction of the Polish authorities to Barbara Engelking's statement about blackmail in Poland. The delegates, especially the German women, complained that Minister Czarnek, when speaking about the country's shared history, was said to have spoken in an aggressive and rude manner. Professor Krasnodębski comments on the matter as follows. Knowledge of history is always necessary and useful. Minister of Education and Science Przemysław Czarnek reminded Sabine Verheyen of German crimes committed during World War II, but the European Parliament representative said the statement was aggressive. History is not looked at from one point of view or another. One looks at the facts as they were. In response to your letter, I would like to point out that you are a representative of a nation that happened to behave in a black and white way. The headquarters of the Ministry of Education happened to be the headquarters of the Gestapo. For several years, your ancestors carried out a massacre, and this is looked at as a massacre, not from one point of view or another. According to representatives of the European Parliament's Culture and Education Committee, academic freedom, artistic freedom and media freedom, among other things, are under threat in Poland. The fact that the government will not fund research shows a disturbed approach to academic freedom. Law and Justice MEP Zdzisław Krasnodębski points out that the Commission came to Poland with ready-made theses. Minister Czarnek is a decisive person and he strongly refuted the opinions of these ladies. In the minds of our Western neighbours, there is a belief that it was not the Germans but the Nazis who imposed their rule on the Third Reich in 1933. However, they forget that it was the Germans themselves who voted for them in a general election. First of all, in Germany, the official version of historical policies on the 8th of May 1945, Germany was liberated. That is, de facto, they were victims. There is no awareness that the Germans committed crimes against the Poles, and rather there is an awareness that, if anything, the Poles were collaborators. On the 1st of September last year, a report was published on the losses suffered by Poland during the German occupation. For months, Polish diplomats have been presenting this document in Western countries, especially in Germany. Poland must consistently talk about these issues and remind them. There is a German lie that says that some Nazis invaded Germany and caused the war. Germany has a problem not only with its own history. On the website of the Independent Plenipotentiary for Child Sex Abuse, you can read that a Polish mother, a believing Catholic, hates gays and will reject her child because of homosexuality. Waldemar Krzysiak points out that Germans want to escape their own problems in this way. In 2020, that's almost 800 attacks on LGBTQ+ people. That's just in Berlin alone. 60% are assaults, murders, rape, so serious violence. Germany had a law providing penalties for homosexuality for several decades after World War II. Germans are convinced that they are the progressive ones, but they have a huge backlog when it comes to the rights of sexual minorities. In 1994, Germany abolished Section 175, which banned homosexual relations. The War Losses Institute is preparing a report on obtaining war reparations from Russia for the losses Poland suffered as a result of the actions of the USSR, Deputy Foreign Minister Arkady Chmielarczyk announced today. Meanwhile, Russian Duma chairman Vyacheslav Volodin claims that Poland as a state exists only thanks to Russia and is demanding $750 billion for Poland's liberation from fascist occupation.
The Institute of War Losses will appoint a group of scientists to estimate the losses Poland suffered as a result of the direct aggression, decades of occupation, and exploitation of the Polish state by the Soviet Union. The mechanism of Sovietization was introduced. It included, of course, the depolonization of these territories and also a spiral of collective repression against Polish citizens, primarily those with strong ties to the Polish state. It is also worth saying that, for example, a city like Głogów was completely destroyed, almost 90% of it. Also, those post-German areas that were later assigned to Poland, such as Wrocław, they too were looted and plundered. As a result of the USSR's aggression against Poland, our country suffered not only territorial, but also material losses, buildings, elements of industrial infrastructure, and cultural assets. Poland has filed 27 restitution claims in this case to Russia. The last 7 requests were made by Deputy Prime Minister Piotr Gliński back in the fall of last year. We have detected Polish works of art in the Pushkin Museum in Moscow. Under international law, Russia should return them. Unfortunately, all of our requests remain unanswered by the Russian side. Last September, the Foreign Ministry published a report on the war losses Poland suffered as a consequence of warfare and the crimes of the Third Reich. It was estimated that Poland should receive 6,200 billion zloty. According to experts, the preparation of a new report on Russian aggression will be much more difficult.
W przypadku Niemiec, to już było zresztą powiedziane, te obliczenia są
The Germans meticulously documented their war gains, therefore estimating losses was relatively simple. It is known what was lost and where. It was also cataloged in some way. The Germans are orderly. However, in the USSR, it all happened on a catch-all basis. What could be stolen was stolen. What lay replanted from the Polish western lands, which are so-called today, could be dismantled was dismantled. This was not archived here in any way.
Nie archiwizowano.
All recent Russian historiography, all Russian propaganda is based on the so-called patriotic war, in which Russia defeated the great aggressor Hitler. They forget to say that for 2 years they were co-aggressors, and hand in hand with Hitler they attacked and murdered. And in fact, without their agreement with Hitler, there would have been no war. So I doubt they want to change their minds until Russia is de-imperialized, and until it is, it will invade other countries. In response to Polish announcements, Russians react in the only way they know and totally reverse the narrative. Chairman of the Russian Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin, is demanding $750 billion in reparations from Poland for liberating Poland from fascist occupation. Poland betrayed historical memory. Soviet soldiers paid a high price for liberating the country from fascist occupation. 1/3 of Poland's current land, areas with developed infrastructure, industrial enterprises, and rich in natural resources, became part of Poland after World War II, only thanks to our state. According to today's calculations, Poland received $750 billion from the USSR for the reconstruction and development of the country. More than 800 industrial, energy, and transport facilities were to be built with this money. Poland as a state exists only thanks to our country. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki called Russia's demand absurd. Not only is it absurd for Russia to demand any sanctions here, but it is a typical, earlier I would say Soviet, today we can say it is a typical Russian propaganda ploy. According to experts, anyone who describes the entry of the Red Army as the liberation of Polish lands is falsifying history. In 1944, the third period of deportation of Poles and Polish citizens to gulags began. It is estimated that more than 80,000 people ended up in Soviet gulags and NKVD camps. Poland was not liberated by the Red Army. Poland was actually conquered, and we were occupied for the next decades, at least until 1989. And let me just remind you that the last Russian troops left our country on September 17, 1993. After the end of World War II, as a result of the Yalta Agreements, the borders of Poland were shifted westward. At the expense of the USSR, Poland lost 175,000 square kilometers, almost half of its pre-war territory.
Risking mined roads and shelling, a Polish filmmaker ferrying civilians away from the front lines of Ukraine's war with Russia is the focus of a new documentary entitled In the Rear View. Filmed in the initial months of the conflict, director Maciek Hamela captured the intimate movements of people speaking of their experiences of war and evacuation in the backseat of a van. For Hamela, filming was always subordinate to the evacuation effort, but he acknowledged the difficulties in creating a movie in such a format.
So the filming part was always subordinate to the evacuation effort, and this was the principle that we did not want to let go of. From the get-go, and this is what gave us the formal also constraint of we are going to be shooting the car mostly. It's always risky to make a film within a car. You know, we know a lot of examples from cinema, but they're not. You know, it's they're all not all these films work perfectly, and it's hard to make a feature that's enclosed in such a tight space.
Initially, Hamela drove Ukrainian refugees from the Polish border before crossing into Ukraine to reach more remote places. He then brought along a friend to film the travels and take turns in driving.
I decided to hop on the other side of the border very fast after a week and start going to more remote places in Ukraine because I knew Russian and I knew there was a bigger necessity for drivers on the other side. We had a lot of these trips where people weren't that open, where they did not feel the necessity to share. Because sometimes the trips were shorter. We were not driving them, for example, for 3 days, like the case of the surrogate mother. That was a 3-day trip. Sometimes we drove them only for a few hours to the first evacuation train. And this was fine, you know, this was from the beginning, was part of the deal.
Director Hamela was speaking to Reuters ahead of the film's debut at this year's Cannes Film Festival on the French Riviera. Early today, ministers from the Northern Group, comprising 11 NATO countries and Sweden, met near Warsaw to discuss security issues and the upcoming Vilnius summit. Poland is in advanced talks to buy Swedish early warning planes and hopes negotiations will be finalised shortly. Polish Defence Minister Mariusz Błaszczak said. Poland has ramped up military spending since Russia's invasion of neighbouring Ukraine in February last year, with the government pledging to double the size of the army and spend 4% of GDP on defence in 2023. Błaszczak did not provide further details on the number or type of aircraft. I would like to say, for the first time publicly, that we are in advanced talks when it comes to acquiring early warning planes from Sweden. We are already conducting detailed negotiations and I hope these will shortly be successfully finalised. In this way, we are strengthening the resilience of Poland, but also of NATO's eastern flank. The ministers from the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Germany, Poland, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia are scheduled to discuss various security topics, including the training of Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16 fighter jet. The United Kingdom-initiated format will also address Sweden's admission status, as the Nordic country may receive approval to join NATO at the Vilnius summit in July. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.